The champagne glasses clinked around me, their crystalline song mingling with the murmur of expensive conversation. The ballroom smelled of wealth, designer perfumes, fresh flowers, and that indefinable scent of money that clung to people who'd never worried about rent. I tugged at my bridesmaid dress, feeling the satin strain slightly across my hips. Elena had insisted we all wear these pale gold dresses that made my olive skin look sallow and tired. "Smile, Sophia," my sister Elena whispered, her manicured nails digging into my bare arm. "This is the happiest day of my life." "Try to look like you're not at a funeral." I forced my lips upward, wondering if anyone could see through the facade. My feet already ached in the stilettos she'd demanded we wear, and we hadn't even reached the reception toast yet. But this wasn't about me. It never was. This was about Elena marrying Alessandro Romano, and the fairy tale wedding she'd dreamed of since we were little girls, playing with pillowcases as veils. Except in those childhood games, the groom was never a man whose name made people lower their voices in fear. I scanned the opulent ballroom of the Romano estate, taking in the hundreds of roses, the ice sculptures, the small orchestra. This was no ordinary wedding. This was a coronation for a queen taking her place beside Chicago's most dangerous king, though no one spoke those words aloud. Alessandro's import business was the polite fiction everyone maintained, from the mayor seated at the head table to the police commissioner raising a glass in toast. "He's looking at you," Elena hissed, and I snapped my attention back to her. My sister, the bride, glowed in her custom Vera Wang gown, diamonds at her throat and wrists catching the light. Her blonde hair was arranged in an intricate updo that had taken 3 stylists 4 hours to perfect. Smile at him, for God's sake. I turned my gaze to Alessandro Romano, seated beside my sister at the head table. At 45, he was nearly 20 years older than Elena, but he wore his age like he wore his custom Italian suit, with ruthless elegance. His salt and pepper hair was cropped short, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face, and his eyes. Those infamous dark eyes that seemed to register everything without revealing anything were indeed fixed on me. I smiled weakly, a chill running down my spine as he inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. There was something unsettling in his gaze, something assessing. I'd only met him a handful of times before the wedding, and each encounter left me feeling like I'd been X-rayed, categorized, and filed away. "To family," he'd said the first time we met, his accent caressing the words with an old-world formality as he kissed my hand. Family is everything. The memory made me shiver now. There were rumors about what happened to people who crossed Alessandro Romano's family. My thoughts scattered as the crystal tinkle of a knife against glass cut through the murmur of conversation. The best man, some cousin of Alessandro's with a permanent smirk and eyes that lingered too long on the bridesmaids, rose to his feet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "it's time for a toast to the happy couple." The crowd hushed obediently. I watched as Alessandro stood, taking the microphone with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to command. His dark gaze swept the room, and bodies straightened instinctively. "Today," he began, his voice a rich baritone with that slight Italian inflection that somehow made everything sound like both a promise and a threat. "I am the most fortunate man in Chicago." A polite chuckle rippled through the crowd. He looked down at Elena with an expression I couldn't quite read. Possession, pride, perhaps even something like tenderness. My sister beamed up at him, every inch the blushing bride. "When I first saw Elena," he continued, "I knew she was meant to be mine." The word mine sent another involuntary shiver through me. There was something almost medieval in the way Alessandro regarded my sister. Not as a partner, but as a prized acquisition. "She brings light into my world," he said, raising his glass. "And now she brings me the greatest gift a man can receive, family." The crowd murmured appreciatively, and I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Instead, I reached for my champagne, needing something to steady my nerves. "To my bride," Alessandro continued, his voice deepening as he gazed at Elena. "My beautiful wife, may our lives together be blessed with loyalty, prosperity, and children." He emphasized the last word, and I saw my sister's smile falter slightly before recovering. I was perhaps the only one who knew that Elena had no interest in children. Not yet, anyway. She wanted to travel, to enjoy being Mrs. Romano, to bask in the luxury her new husband promised. but I also knew my sister well enough to recognize when she was keeping secrets. As Alessandro raised his glass higher, the crowd following suit, the massive double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. The timing couldn't have been more dramatic if it had been choreographed. A collective gasp rippled through the guests, and hundreds of heads turned in unison. The woman who stood framed in the doorway was striking in her stillness. She wore a simple black dress that clung to curves I couldn't help but envy, her dark hair falling in loose waves to her shoulders. But it was her face that caught and held attention. High cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that somehow managed to look both wounded and dangerous. Those eyes were fixed on Alessandro. Her hand, with its perfectly manicured red nails, held the small hand of a child. A boy, perhaps 4 or 5, with a mop of dark curls and a solemn expression. He wore a miniature suit, complete with a tiny bow tie, looking like he'd stepped out of a luxury children's catalog. The silence that fell over the ballroom was absolute. Even the orchestra stopped playing. I glanced at Alessandro and felt my blood freeze. His face had transformed from confident charm to something I could only describe as terrifying stillness. The champagne glass in his hand trembled once, the only sign of emotion, before his fingers tightened around the stem. Elena had gone rigid beside him, her smile fixed like a porcelain mask about to crack. "Vittoria," Alessandro finally said, the single word slicing through the silence like a blade. I looked from him to the woman, Vittoria, and back again, understanding dawning with sickening clarity. Vittoria. The name Elena had forbidden us to mention. Alessandro's ex-wife. The child looked up at Vittoria, then followed her gaze to Alessandro. Even from across the room, I could see the resemblance. Those same dark, assessing eyes, the same proud tilt to the chin. "Forgive the interruption," Vittoria said, her accented voice carrying effortlessly across the silent room, "but I thought it was time for a family reunion." She looked down at the boy and added gently, "Marco, meet your father." The champagne glass slipped from Alessandro's fingers, shattering against the marble floor like the sound of breaking ice. And in that crystalline explosion, I saw my sister's perfect day, her perfect life, fracture beyond repair. Elena let out a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Her hand clutched at the tablecloth, knuckles white. "Security," Alessandro's cousin muttered into a sleeve, and I noticed for the first time the dark-suited men stationed around the perimeter of the room shifting into alertness. Alessandro raised his hand, a small gesture that nonetheless froze everyone in place. "No," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Not here. Not now." He stepped away from the head table, each movement deliberate and controlled. The crowd parted before him like the Red Sea as he approached Vittoria and the child, and I, caught in the magnetic pull of this unfolding disaster, found myself following him. Not closely. I wasn't that brave or that foolish, but close enough to hear what happened next. "You have no right," he said to Vittoria, his voice so low I had to strain to catch the words. "I have every right," she replied, her chin lifting. "You denied him for 5 years. He deserves to know his father." The boy, Marco, stared up at Alessandro with those mirrored dark eyes, curiosity mixing with uncertainty. "My son," Alessandro's voice held a dangerous edge of doubt. Vittoria's laugh was brittle. "You know he is. Look at him, Alessandro. He has your eyes, your mother's chin, your father's temper, God help me." Alessandro knelt slowly, bringing himself eye level with the child. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. From the corner of my eye, I saw Elena sink back into her chair, her face ashen beneath her perfect makeup. "Hello, Marco," Alessandro said, his voice softening to a tone I'd never heard from him before. The boy regarded him solemnly. "Are you my papa?" he asked in perfect, unaccented English. Something flickered across Alessandro's face. Pain, wonder, fury, before settling into a careful neutrality. "It seems I am. Mama said we had to dress up to meet you," Marco continued, adjusting his little bow tie with a seriousness that would have been comical under any other circumstances. "She said it was a special day." Alessandro's jaw tightened. He looked up at Vittoria, and the look they exchanged contained volumes. History, betrayal, unfinished business. We should discuss this privately, he said, rising to his feet. Of course. Vittoria agreed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We wouldn't want to ruin the celebration. Her gaze drifted past Alessandro to where Elena sat, frozen and pale at the head table, then swept the room, taking in the spectacle of the wedding. When her eyes landed on me, I felt a jolt of recognition. Not because we'd met before, but because I saw in her expression the same unease I'd been feeling all day. The sense of being trapped in someone else's fairy tale. Alessandro turned and addressed the stunned crowd. Please, continue enjoying yourselves. A small family matter requires my attention. As if on cue, the orchestra tentatively resumed playing, a quiet melody that did nothing to dispel the tension. Hushed conversations erupted around the room as Alessandro placed his hand lightly on Marco's shoulder, guiding him and Vittoria toward a side door. As they passed, Vittoria's gaze met mine again, and this time there was something else in her expression. Warning, perhaps, or pity. Elena was suddenly beside me, her fingers digging into my arm with bruising force. Did you know about this? She hissed, her voice trembling. Of course not, I whispered back. How would I? I can't believe she would do this, today of all days. My sister's perfect makeup couldn't hide the fury and humiliation burning in her eyes. I need you to find out what's happening. Go after them. What? Elena, no. Please, Sophia, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I can't leave the reception and I need to know. What if he... She couldn't finish the sentence, but I understood her fear. What if Alessandro decided his son took precedence over his new bride? Against every instinct for self-preservation, I found myself nodding. Okay. But what do I say if they catch me? Elena's smile was tight with strain. You're getting air. The champagne went to your head. Anything. Just go. I slipped away from her, following the path Alessandro had taken with Vittoria and Marco. The side door led to a corridor lined with oil paintings of stern-looking men, who all seemed to share Alessandro's penetrating gaze. I'd never been in this part of the Romano estate before, and each step deeper into the mansion felt like a step further from safety. Ahead, I heard the murmur of voices coming from behind a partially open door. I approached silently, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew I was crossing a line, intruding on a private moment that could have dangerous consequences, but I couldn't turn back, not with Elena waiting for information, not with my own curiosity burning through my caution. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, straining to hear. 5 years, Vittoria, Alessandro was saying, his voice tightly controlled. 5 years you kept my son from me. You made your choice, Vittoria replied. You chose your business over your family, over our safety. I would have protected you both, like you protected my brother. The pain in her voice was raw. He's still in prison because of you. Your brother made his own choices, Alessandro's tone hardened, as did you when you ran. I did what I had to do to protect our son. There was a pause, and I heard the softer voice of the child asking something I couldn't make out. Yes, Marco, Alessandro answered, his voice gentling. These paintings are all of our family. Your family. Someday your picture will hang here too. The possessive certainty in his voice sent a chill through me. I leaned closer to the door, trying to see inside. It was my mistake. My heel caught on the plush carpet, sending me stumbling forward. The door swung open wider under my hand, and suddenly I was face to face with Alessandro, Vittoria, and Marco. Alessandro's expression darkened dangerously. Sophia, he said, my name a question and an accusation. I'm sorry, I stammered, heat rushing to my face. I was just... Elena was worried and... Come in, he said, cutting off my fumbling explanation. Close the door behind you. I stepped into what appeared to be a study, the walls lined with bookshelves and more paintings. Marco sat on a leather sofa, swinging his legs and looking at a large book of what appeared to be family photographs. Vittoria stood by the fireplace, her posture tense. As I closed the door, sealing myself in with them, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a terrible, possibly life-altering mistake. Alessandro's study felt like stepping into another century, all dark wood, leather-bound books, and the lingering scent of expensive cigars. The air seemed heavier here, charged with the electricity of the confrontation I'd interrupted. Marco continued flipping through the photo album, oblivious to the tension surrounding him, while the three adults remained locked in uncomfortable silence. "So you're Elena's sister," Vittoria finally said, her voice surprisingly gentle compared to the steel I'd heard through the door. "The maid of honor." I nodded, feeling hopelessly out of place in my gold bridesmaid dress. "Yes, I'm Sofia." "And Elena sent you to spy?" Alessandro asked, his tone conversational but his eyes cold. "She's worried," I admitted, seeing no point in lying. "This is unexpected." A bitter smile flickered across Vittoria's face. "I imagine it would be. Finding out your new husband has a son on your wedding day. A son you chose to reveal in the most public, humiliating way possible," Alessandro countered, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter. "He didn't offer one to either of us. Why now, Vittoria? After 5 years of silence? Why choose this moment?" She looked away, her profile sharp against the warm glow of the study lamp. "I heard you were getting married, that you were starting a new family." Her eyes flicked to the door, in the direction of the ballroom where Elena waited. "I couldn't let you erase us from your life. Marco deserves to know who he is." Alessandro took a measured sip of his drink, his gaze never leaving her face, and it had nothing to do with revenge. "Papa," Marco called from the sofa, his small voice breaking through the tension. "Is this grandmother?" He held up the album, pointing to a photograph of an elegant older woman. The transformation in Alessandro's face was startling. The hardness in his eyes softened as he crossed to sit beside his son. "Yes, Marco. That was my mother, your grandmother. She would have adored you." I watched as he gently took the book, turning pages and pointing out relatives. The tenderness in his movements contradicted everything I'd heard about Alessandro Romano, the man whose business rivals had a habit of disappearing. In this moment, he was just a father meeting his son for the first time. "She has your eyes," Vittoria said quietly, and it took me a moment to realize she was speaking to me. "I'm sorry?" "Your sister," she clarified. "She has your eyes. The same shape, though a different color. That's how I knew who you were." I nodded awkwardly, unsure how to respond. There was something in Vittoria's manner that unnerved me, a calm certainty, as if she'd already mapped out exactly how this scenario would play out. "You should return to the reception," Alessandro said suddenly, looking up at me. "Tell Elena I'll join her shortly. This matter requires my attention." It was a dismissal, but I hesitated. Elena would want more information than that. What should I tell her about Marco? Alessandro's expression darkened slightly. "Tell her the truth. I have a son. We will discuss what that means for our future when I return." The coldness of his response sent a chill through me. In that moment, I pitied my sister. Whatever fairy tale she thought she was living had just collided violently with reality. "She loves you," I said, the words escaping before I could reconsider their wisdom. "She's dreamed of this day her whole life." Something unreadable flickered across Alessandro's face. "Love?" he repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. "Yes, I'm sure she does." Vittoria made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "Go back to your sister, Sofia," she said. "This conversation isn't for you." I nodded, turning to leave, but Alessandro's voice stopped me. "One moment." He rose from the sofa, crossing to a desk where he scribbled something on a card. "Give this to Elena," he said, handing it to me. "It's private." The card felt heavy in my hand, embossed with the Romano family crest. I slipped it into the small clutch purse that matched my bridesmaid dress, and backed toward the door. "It was interesting to meet you," I said to Vittoria, unsure of the proper etiquette for addressing your sister's husband's ex-wife who had just crashed the wedding with his secret child. Her smile was sad. "Be careful, Sofia," she replied cryptically. "This family, it changes people." With a final glance at Marco, still absorbed in the family photographs, I slipped out of the study and hurried back toward the reception. The ballroom had recovered some semblance of normality in my absence. The orchestra played, couples danced, and waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. But I could feel the undercurrent of gossip, see the glances and whispers as I made my way toward Elena. My sister sat alone at the head table, her perfect posture and fixed smile belying the storm I knew must be raging inside her. Alessandro's empty seat beside her seemed to grow larger with every passing minute. "Well?" she demanded as I approached, her voice low and tense. "What's happening?" I sank into the chair beside her, suddenly exhausted. "It's true," I said gently. "The boy is his son. His name is Marco." Elena's face remained impressively composed, though her fingers whitened around her champagne glass. "And the woman? His ex-wife? Vittoria?" "Yes." I hesitated before adding, "She kept the boy from him. He didn't know." A flash of relief crossed Elena's features. "So he didn't lie to me. He didn't know he had a son." I nodded, though something in my gut twisted uncomfortably. Alessandro's reaction had seemed too controlled for a man receiving life-altering news, but who was I to question it? "He said he'll be back shortly, that you'll discuss what it means for your future." Elena's laugh was brittle. Our future. On our wedding day, we're already discussing our future, like it's something uncertain. She drained her champagne in one unladylike gulp. What else did they say? Is she trying to get him back? I thought of Vittoria's calm demeanor, the warning in her eyes. I don't know. She said she wanted Marco to know his father. How convenient after 5 years. Elena's voice dripped with sarcasm. "And on my wedding day? Please." I reached for my sister's hand, squeezing it gently. "He gave me this for you," I said, retrieving the card from my purse. "He said it's private." Elena snatched it from me, turning away slightly as she opened it. I watched her face as she read, the frown of concentration, the widening of her eyes, the slight parting of her lips. Whatever Alessandro had written, it wasn't what she had expected. "Elena, what does it say?" She folded the card quickly, tucking it into her bodice. "Nothing. Just, he'll be back soon." Her voice had changed, become higher, tighter. "I need air. Come with me to the terrace." I followed her through the French doors onto the grand terrace overlooking the Romano estate's manicured gardens. The night air was cool against my skin, a welcome relief from the stuffy formality of the ballroom. Stars glittered overhead, indifferent to the human drama unfolding beneath them. Elena paced to the stone balustrade, her wedding gown whispering against the flagstones. "This is a nightmare," she whispered. "A complete nightmare." "It's complicated," I agreed. "But it doesn't have to ruin everything. Plenty of marriages have stepchildren." "You don't understand." She whirled to face me, her carefully constructed composure cracking. "Alessandro isn't like other men. His world, his family, it operates by different rules. There are expectations." I frowned, confused by her reaction. "What expectations? That he acknowledge his son? That seems reasonable." Elena laughed, the sound verging on hysterical. "Reasonable. Yes, that's what you'd think." She glanced over her shoulder, checking we were alone before continuing in a hushed voice. "Before we got engaged, Alessandro told me about his family traditions, the importance of blood, of legacy." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the night air. "What are you saying?" "His firstborn son inherits everything," she whispered. "The business, the properties, the power. It's why he wanted children right away." I told him. She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. "You told him what?" I prompted gently. Elena's eyes, so like my own, filled with tears. "I told him I couldn't have children," she admitted, "that I was infertile." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "But you're not, are you?" She looked away. "No. I've been on birth control since we started dating. I wasn't ready. I wanted time with him first, time to enjoy being Mrs. Romano before becoming a mother. I thought I'd tell him the truth in a year or two, that there'd been a miracle." I stared at my sister, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. The calculation behind her perfect smile, the ambition that had drawn her to Alessandro in the first place, and now his actual firstborn son has appeared. She nodded miserably. "You see the problem." Before I could respond, the French doors opened behind us. We both turned, expecting Alessandro. but instead found his cousin, the best man with the perpetual smirk. "Mrs. Romano," he said, addressing Elena with a formality that seemed out of place given the intimate family celebration. "Your husband requests your presence in his study." Elena straightened, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her wedding gown. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear I'd glimpsed moments before. "Sophia, wait for me here. I won't be long." As she followed Alessandro's cousin back into the ballroom, she shot me a look over her shoulder. Part fear, part determination. I wanted to follow, to protect her somehow, but I knew my presence wouldn't be welcome. This was between husband and wife, a test of their new vows within hours of making them. Left alone on the terrace, I sank onto a stone bench, suddenly aware of how tired I was. The day had been long even before the dramatic interruption. Hours of hair and makeup, photographs, the ceremony. And now this unexpected twist. I closed my eyes briefly, listening to the muffled sounds of the reception continuing without its bride and groom. They make quite a pair, don't they? My eyes snapped open. Vittoria stood a few feet away, her black dress blending with the shadows. Marco wasn't with her. "Where's the boy?" I asked, rising to my feet. "With his father," she replied, moving to the balustrade and looking out over the gardens. "Alessandro insisted on spending time alone with him, getting to know his son." She spoke the last words with a bitterness that seemed at odds with her earlier determination to introduce them. I hesitated, caught between curiosity and caution. "Why did you really come here tonight? It couldn't just have been about introducing Marco to his father." Vittoria turned to face me, the moonlight casting half her face in shadow. "You're perceptive, unlike your sister." "Don't," I warned. "Whatever's between you and Alessandro, leave Elena out of it." Her laugh was soft and without humor. "Elena put herself in it the moment she agreed to marry him. Did she tell you how they met?" I frowned, thinking back. Elena had been vague about the details, saying only that they'd encountered each other at a charity gala. "At some event, I think." "At my art gallery," Vittoria corrected. "She came specifically to meet him, 6 weeks after our separation was announced. She researched his tastes, pretended to be interested in the same artists he collected. It was quite the performance. The information landed like a slap. It fit with the calculation I'd glimpsed in Elena earlier, but I still felt defensive of my sister. You can't blame her for being attracted to him. Attracted to him, or to what he represents. Vittoria moved closer, her perfume, something expensive and unfamiliar, wrapping around me. Your sister wanted the life I walked away from. The money, the power, the status of being Mrs. Romano. Did she ever wonder why I left it all behind? I swallowed hard. Why did you? Vittoria's gaze held mine, her eyes dark and serious in the moonlight. Because the price was too high, because Alessandro's world destroys everything it touches, because I wanted my son to have a chance at a normal life. Then why bring him back now? I challenged. Why not keep him away if it's so dangerous? Something shifted in her expression. A flicker of uncertainty, or perhaps guilt. Because I'm dying, she said simply. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. Marco needs his father now. The blunt admission stunned me into silence. I searched her face, looking for signs of deception, but finding only a resigned weariness beneath her elegant exterior. I'm sorry, I finally managed. I didn't know. No one does, except my doctors, and now you. She turned back to the gardens, her profile sharp against the night sky. I needed to see what kind of man Alessandro has become before I... She trailed off, then corrected herself. Before arrangements need to be made for Marco's care. Understanding dawned slowly. You're evaluating him. Tonight wasn't just about introducing them. You're deciding whether Alessandro gets custody when you're gone. Vittoria's smile was sad, as I said, perceptive. She sighed softly. I had other options. My sister in Milan, my cousin in Boston. But Marco deserves to know his heritage, his family. If Alessandro has changed, if he's capable of putting our son's needs above his own ambitions. The unfinished thought hung in the air between us. I thought of Alessandro's controlled reaction to meeting his son, the tenderness when showing Marco the family photographs, and then I thought of Elena, waiting in his study, her elaborate lie about infertility unraveling. What will happen to my sister? I asked quietly. Vittoria shrugged, an elegant movement that managed to convey both sympathy and indifference. That depends on how much Alessandro values his new marriage versus his son's inheritance. The Romanos have traditions stretching back generations. The firstborn son inherits everything, I finished. She told me. Then she knows what's at stake. Vittoria pushed away from the balustrade. I should get back. Marco will be looking for me. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Vittoria. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Was it worth it? The years with him? Her expression softened slightly. There were moments of great happiness. Alessandro can be intense in his affections, possessive, jealous, overwhelming. But when he loves completely. She hesitated before adding, just don't ever betray him. That's the one thing he can never forgive. With those words hanging in the air, she disappeared into the shadows of the terrace, leaving me alone with my troubled thoughts. I waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, watching the reception through the French doors. Guests were beginning to notice the prolonged absence of the bride and groom. Whispers circulated. Concerned glances were exchanged. The wedding cake remained uncut, the traditional first dance unperformed. Finally, unable to bear the suspense any longer, I made my decision. I would find Elena, offer whatever support I could. This was still my sister's wedding day, even if it had taken an unexpected turn. I slipped back into the ballroom, avoiding the questioning looks from other guests, and made my way toward the corridor that led to Alessandro's study. The hallway seemed longer now, the paintings of Romano patriarchs watching my progress with judgmental eyes. As I approached the study door, I heard raised voices from within. One male, one female. Not Elena's voice, I realized with a start, but Vittoria's. You can't be serious, she was saying, her calm composure apparently abandoned. After everything, I've made my decision, Alessandro interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Marco is my son, my blood, my heir. And her? Your bride? What about her? There was a pause before Alessandro responded, his voice lowered to a register I had to strain to hear. She lied to me, Vittoria, about the most important thing. My blood ran cold. Somehow he'd discovered Elena's deception already. And you never lied? Vittoria challenged. To me? To others? That was different. The dismissal in his tone was absolute. Business requires certain flexibilities with truth. Family requires absolute honesty. So what will you do? The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. I leaned closer to the door, heart hammering in my chest. What I must. Alessandro finally answered. What the family requires. The ominous finality in his words sent fear spiraling through me. I backed away from the door, mind racing. I needed to find Elena, to warn her, though I wasn't sure of what exactly. As I turned to hurry down the hallway, I collided with a solid chest. Strong hands steadied me, and I looked up into the face of one of Alessandro's security men, a stone-faced individual I'd noticed watching the proceedings throughout the day. Miss Sophia, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle given his intimidating appearance. Mr. Romano asked me to find you. Your sister needs you in the West Wing guest suite. Elena? My voice cracked with concern. Is she okay? The man's expression gave nothing away. She asked for you specifically. I'll take you to her. With no real choice, I followed him through the labyrinthine hallways of the Romano mansion, moving further from the reception and deeper into the private areas of the estate. My gold bridesmaid dress rustled too loudly in the quiet corridors, my heels clicking in anxious rhythm against the marble floors. Here, the security man said, stopping before an ornate door. She's waiting inside. I hesitated, my hand on the doorknob. Thank you. He nodded once, then took up position beside the door, making it clear he wasn't leaving. The implied surveillance sent another ripple of unease through me as I entered the room. The guest suite was luxurious, all cream silk and gold accents, but I barely noticed the decor. My attention was entirely focused on Elena, who sat on the edge of a chaise lounge, still in her wedding gown, but with her veil removed and her elaborate updo beginning to come undone. Her makeup was smeared from crying, black mascara tracks on her pale cheeks. Elena? I rushed to her side, kneeling before her. What happened? What did he say? She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. He knows, Sophia, about the birth control, about my lie. She clutched my hands, her fingers ice cold despite the warmth of the room. Someone told him. He had my purse brought to him while we were talking, and the pills were there. My mind flashed to the moment Alessandro had handed me the card for Elena. He'd already known then. The private message wasn't a reassurance, but a summons. What did he say? I asked, dreading the answer. Elena's laugh was brittle, on the edge of hysteria. He was so calm, so terrifyingly calm. He said our marriage began with a lie, and that changes everything. She drew a shaky breath. He's locked me in here, Sophia. The security. They won't let me leave. And he's bringing the boy here, to live. Marco? Here? I struggled to make sense of the rapidly shifting situation. But what about Vittoria? Elena's grip on my hands tightened painfully. That's the worst part, she whispered. She's dying. Cancer. Alessandro says Marco needs stability. Family, that he'll be raised here, as the Romano heir. Her voice broke on the last word. The child I never thought existed will live in my home, while I'm kept like a prisoner in my own marriage. We have to get you out of here, I whispered, glancing anxiously at the closed door where I knew Alessandro's security man stood guard. This isn't right, Elena. He can't just lock you up. My sister's laugh was hollow. Can't he? You don't understand the world I've married into, Sophia. The Romano family doesn't operate by normal rules. She wiped roughly at her tear-stained cheeks. Besides, where would I go? Everything I own is here now. My apartment lease ended last month. My clothes, my jewelry, all here. I stared at her, recognizing the calculation even in her distress. She wasn't just afraid. She was weighing her options, counting the cost of escape against the price of staying. This can't be legal, I insisted. Marriage doesn't give him the right to imprison you. Elena's smile was bitter. Call the police, then. I'm sure the Chicago PD will be thrilled to intervene in Alessandro Romano's private family matter. She shook her head. Half the force is on his payroll anyway. The hopelessness in her voice frightened me more than her words. I'd always known my sister to be resilient, ambitious, determined. This defeated woman in a crumpled wedding gown seemed like a stranger. What can I do? I asked, squeezing her cold hands. There must be something. She looked at me, really looked, as if seeing possibilities she hadn't considered. Actually, there is. You can stay. Stay? Here, at the estate. Alessandro mentioned you could move into the guest house for a while, to help me adjust. Her fingers tightened around mine. I need you, Sophia. I can't face this alone. A chill ran through me at the thought of living under Alessandro's roof, within the orbit of his dangerous influence. But the fear in my sister's eyes made refusal impossible. Of course, I said, as long as you need me. Relief softened her features. Thank you. We'll figure this out together. She lowered her voice further. Maybe it won't be so bad. Alessandro says he still considers our marriage valid, just altered. He says I'll still be his wife, still enjoy all the privileges that come with being Mrs. Romano. I just won't be the mother of his heir. The acceptance in her tone disturbed me. And you're okay with that? Being kept like some ornament? Elena's eyes hardened slightly. I made my choice, Sophia. I wanted this life. The security, the luxury, the status. I knew who Alessandro was when I married him. She straightened her shoulders. I miscalculated, that's all. I should have been honest about not wanting children right away. Before I could respond, a soft knock at the door interrupted us. It opened to reveal Vittoria, looking composed despite the earlier heated conversation I'd overheard. Marco wasn't with her. May I come in? She asked, though she was already entering, closing the door behind her. Her gaze traveled from Elena's tear-stained face to my kneeling position before settling somewhere between us. Alessandro asked me to speak with you both. Elena stiffened beside me. I have nothing to say to you. Vittoria nodded, unsurprised by the hostility. Nevertheless, you should listen, for your own sake. She remained standing, maintaining the higher ground both literally and figuratively. Things have changed very quickly tonight, and you deserve to understand what's happening. I rose to sit beside Elena on the chaise, creating a united front. Then explain, I said. Why is my sister being locked up on her wedding night? She's not locked up, Vittoria corrected. She's being given time to consider her options. What options? Elena spat. Vittoria's expression remained neutral. Option 1. You accept the new arrangement. You remain Alessandro's wife in public, attending events, maintaining appearances, enjoying the lifestyle you clearly desired when you pursued him. In private, you accept that Marco is his heir and priority. You treat the boy with kindness and respect. Elena's fingers dug into my arm. And option 2, you leave, tonight, with a generous settlement, but no continuing ties to the Romano family. Vittoria's voice softened slightly. He's angry, Elena, but not unreasonable. He values loyalty above all else, and you began your marriage with a significant betrayal. What about your betrayal? I challenged. You kept his son from him for years. A flash of something, pain, perhaps, or regret, crossed Vittoria's face. I did. To protect Marco from this world, she gestured around the opulent room, seemingly encompassing the entire Romano Empire. I wanted him to have a normal childhood, away from the danger that comes with the Romano name. But circumstances have forced my hand. The cancer, I said quietly. She nodded. 6 months. Maybe less. I had to make arrangements for my son's future. Elena's composure cracked again. So you ruined mine, on my wedding day. That wasn't my intention, Vittoria replied, though I sensed a lack of genuine regret. The timing was unfortunate, but necessary. I needed to see Alessandro with my own eyes, to judge what kind of father he would be to Marco. And, I prompted, a small, sad smile touched her lips. He's changed, hardened in some ways, but when he looked at our son, I saw the man I once loved. She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her black dress. Alessandro will be a good father. Protective. Perhaps too controlling, but that can't be helped. It's in his nature. Elena laughed bitterly. You're defending him? After he locked you out of his life, and now me in this room. I'm not defending him, Vittoria corrected. I'm explaining him. There's a difference. She moved to the window, looking out at the garden illuminated by tasteful landscape lighting. Alessandro sees the world in terms of loyalty and betrayal, family and outsiders. Once, I was family. Then I became an outsider. You made the same transition tonight, just in the opposite direction. I felt a chill at her words. What about Marco? He's just a child. How will he adjust to all this intensity? Vittoria turned back to us. Children are remarkably adaptable. Marco is strong, stronger than I was at his age. He'll thrive here, once he adjusts. She hesitated, then added, I'll be staying too, at least for now, to ease the transition. Elena's head snapped up. You're moving in? Both of you? The East Wing guest house, Vittoria confirmed. Until arrangements can be made for after my treatment fails. She delivered this death sentence with remarkable composure. Alessandro thinks it best for Marco to have both his parents during this time. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister, the new bride, effectively sidelined in her own home while her husband's ex-wife and son took center stage. It was a cruel reversal of the fairy tale Elena had imagined, and I'm supposed to smile through this humiliation? Elena's voice trembled with anger and hurt. Play the happy wife while everyone whispers behind my back? Vittoria regarded her with something like pity. You wanted his world, Elena. This is part of it. The Romano family prioritizes blood ties above all else. Marco is Alessandro's son, his firstborn. Nothing can change that. And if I choose to leave? Elena asked. What happens then? You walk away with $5 million and a clean break. No contact, no claims, no connection to the family. Vittoria's tone was matter-of-fact. Alessandro has already instructed his lawyers to draw up the paperwork for either scenario. You have until morning to decide. The calm way she delivered this ultimatum made it all the more devastating. $5 million was a fortune by normal standards, but compared to the Romano wealth, it was a pittance, a payoff to disappear quietly. This is insane, I said, struggling to process the rapid transformation of what should have been a joyous wedding day. You can't just rewrite a marriage hours after the ceremony. Actually, you can, Vittoria replied. When you have enough power. She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I am sorry about the timing. Marco and I could have waited until after your honeymoon. That was petty of me. The admission of deliberate cruelty hung in the air as she left, closing the door softly behind her. We heard a murmured exchange with the security guard outside, then silence. Elena collapsed against me, her body shaking with silent sobs. I held her, stroking her hair as it came further undone from its elaborate styling. The diamonds at her throat and wrists, Alessandro's wedding gifts, caught the light with every tremor, glittering like cold stars. "What should I do?" she whispered eventually, her voice small and lost. "Tell me what to do, Sophia." I wished I had a clear answer. Part of me wanted to urge her to take the money and run, to escape this dangerous, controlling family before she became truly trapped. But I knew my sister. The glimpse of calculation I'd seen earlier told me she was already weighing the value of the Romano name against the humiliation of her new position. "What do you want, Elena?" I asked gently. "Not what you think you should do, but what you truly want." She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was stronger, more like the sister I knew. "I want what I've always wanted," she said. "Security. Status. The life I've worked so hard for." She sat up, wiping away her tears with newfound resolve. 5 million sounds like a lot, but it wouldn't last forever. And then what? Start over at 33? Become just another divorcee with a scandalous story? I studied her face, seeing the determination hardening her features. "So, you're staying?" Elena nodded. "I'm staying. On my terms." She stood, smoothing down her wrinkled wedding gown. "Alessandro thinks he can just push me aside? Make decorative wife with no real place in his world." A cold smile curved her lips. "He'll learn I'm not so easily managed." The transformation was startling. From broken bride to calculating strategist in the space of minutes, this was the Elena I recognized, the sister who had always found a way to turn setbacks into opportunities. "What are you planning?" I asked, both impressed and concerned by her sudden resolve. "First, I need to secure my position," she said, beginning to pace the room. "If Marco is to be the heir, then I'll be his stepmother. I'll win the boy's trust, become indispensable to him." She paused, her eyes glittering with determination. "And when Vittoria is gone, I'll be the mother figure he turns to." The next morning dawned with an eerie normalcy that felt obscene after the previous night's drama. I awoke in the guest room adjacent to Elena's suite, having refused to leave her alone. The estate hummed with the efficient activity of staff cleaning up the remnants of the wedding reception, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Elena was already awake when I entered her room, dressed in a silk robe and seated at a vanity. Her wedding gown hung like a ghost in the open closet doorway. "You look better," I observed cautiously. She met my eyes in the mirror, her expression composed and determined. "I've made my decision official. I told Alessandro's lawyer an hour ago that I'm staying. The speed of this resolution unsettled me." "Are you sure? You don't need more time to think? Time won't change the facts," she replied, brushing her hair with methodical strokes. "I've invested too much to walk away now." I perched on the edge of her bed. "What did Alessandro say?" "He wasn't there. He spent the night in the East Wing with..." She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. "With Marco. Getting to know his son." The bitterness in her voice was carefully controlled. "We're meeting for breakfast in an hour. A family breakfast." The emphasis she placed on family carried layers of meaning, acknowledgement, challenge, determination. "Would you like me to come with you?" I offered. Elena shook her head. "No. This is something I need to handle myself." She set down her brush and turned to face me. "But I need you to do something else for me. Something important. Anything," I promised, perhaps too quickly. "I need you to get close to Vittoria," she said, her eyes hard and calculating. "Become her friend, her confidant. Find out everything you can about her treatment plans, her relationship with Marco, her history with Alessandro, anything that might be useful." I stared at her, unsettled by the coldness of her strategy. Elena, she's dying. Using that against her seems cruel. Elena finished, her laugh brittle. More cruel than her showing up at my wedding with Alessandro's secret child? More cruel than her moving into my home the day after I became his wife? She stood, tightening the belt of her robe. This isn't about cruelty, Sophia. It's about survival. I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. Put that way, I couldn't entirely disagree. What makes you think she'd confide in me anyway? She already has, Elena pointed out. She told you about her cancer before she told me. There's something about you, Sophia. People trust you. You have that quiet way of listening that makes them want to talk. She squeezed my hands. Please. I need your help if I'm going to navigate this situation. I nodded reluctantly. I'll try. But don't expect miracles. Elena's smile didn't reach her eyes. No miracles. Just information. She turned back to her vanity, selecting a pair of diamond earrings. Another wedding gift from Alessandro. Now help me choose something to wear. First impressions with Marco are crucial. An hour later, I wandered the grounds of the Romano estate alone, giving Elena space for her family breakfast. The morning was cool and bright, the gardens immaculate, showing no signs of the previous night's celebration. I found myself drawn toward the East Wing guest house, a guest house that was larger than most people's entire homes. As I approached, I noticed a small figure sitting on the front steps, hunched over something in his lap. Marco. He looked up as I drew near, his dark eyes, so like his father's, regarding me with solemn curiosity. "Hello," I said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm Sophia, Elena's sister." "I know," he replied with surprising directness. "Dad told me about you." The casual way he referred to Alessandro as Dad after knowing him for less than a day was remarkable. Children really were adaptable, as Vittoria had said. "What are you reading?" I asked, nodding to the book in his lap. He held it up, a worn copy of The Little Prince in Italian. "It's my favorite," he said. "Mom reads it to me every night. The mention of Vittoria gave me an opening." "Is your mom inside?" Marco nodded, then hesitated before adding, "She's not feeling well this morning. She said to play outside while she rests." My heart twisted at the reminder of her illness. "Would you like some company?" I offered. "I could sit with you for a while." He considered this with an adult-like seriousness, before nodding and scooting over to make room on the step. I sat beside him, careful to maintain a little distance. "Why aren't you at breakfast with Dad and the bride lady?" he asked bluntly. I smiled at his description of Elena. "They needed some time to talk. Grown-up stuff." Marco's nose wrinkled. "That's what Mom always says when she doesn't want to explain things." He studied me with those penetrating eyes. "Are you sad?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you think that?" "Your eyes look sad," he said simply. "Like Mom's sometimes. Children's perception could be uncanny." "I'm worried about my sister," I admitted. "A lot has changed very quickly." Marco nodded sagely. "For me too. Yesterday I was at home in Boston, and now Dad says we live here." He didn't sound upset by this, merely stating facts. "Mom says I should be patient with the bride lady because she didn't know about me." I wondered what else Vittoria had told her son. "What do you think about all this?" I asked gently. He shrugged, a very childlike gesture that reminded me he was only 5 despite his precocious speech. "It's okay. The house is big, and Dad says I can have a dog." His face brightened at this prospect, then grew serious again. "But Mom needs her medicine, and she gets tired a lot." The door opened behind us before I could respond. Vittoria stood there, wrapped in a silk dressing gown similar to Elena's, but in deep burgundy rather than cream. Her face was pale, dark circles visible beneath her eyes despite careful makeup application. "Marco, I was looking for—" She stopped when she saw me. "Sophia, I didn't expect to see you here." I stood quickly. "I was just walking the grounds. Marco and I were getting acquainted." She smiled slightly, though it seemed to require effort. "I see. Thank you for keeping him company." To Marco, she added, "Breakfast is ready, sweetheart. Go wash your hands." Marco hopped up obediently, giving me a shy wave before disappearing inside. Vittoria remained in the doorway, studying me with tired eyes. "Would you like to come in?" she offered after a moment. "I've just made coffee." The invitation surprised me, but it aligned perfectly with Elena's request to get closer to her. "That would be nice, thank you." The interior of the guest house was elegantly appointed, but already showed signs of hasty occupation. A child's jacket thrown over a chair, a woman's scarf draped on a sofa, small suitcases still unpacked in the entryway. Vittoria led me to a sunlit kitchen where the remains of Marco's breakfast, half-eaten toast and scrambled eggs, sat on the counter. "I'm afraid I'm not much of a hostess these days," she apologized, pouring coffee into 2 porcelain cups. "The mornings are difficult." She didn't elaborate, but I understood she was referring to the side effects of her treatment. "Please don't apologize," I said, accepting the coffee. I should be the one apologizing for intruding. Vittoria waved this away, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. "You're not intruding. In fact, it's nice to see a face that isn't looking at me with either pity or calculation." She took a careful sip of her coffee. "How is your sister this morning?" I considered my response, aware of my promise to Elena but uncomfortable with outright deception. "Determined," I finally answered. "She's decided to stay." Vittoria nodded, unsurprised. "I expected as much. The Romano name is a powerful lure." Her tone held no judgment, only weariness. "She's meeting with Alessandro and Marco now. A new family portrait." The words stung on Elena's behalf, though I knew Vittoria hadn't intended cruelty. "It's a difficult situation for everyone," I offered neutrally. "Some more than others." Vittoria's gaze drifted to the window where we could see Marco in the garden now, examining a butterfly with intense concentration. "He deserves stability, a future secured by his father's name and protection. That's all that matters now." The maternal love in her voice was raw and powerful. Whatever complicated history existed between her and Alessandro, her devotion to her son was absolute. "You really believe Alessandro will be a good father?" I asked softly. "Despite everything I've heard about him." Vittoria's smile was sad. "Alessandro is a complex man. Dangerous in business, yes. Unforgiving of betrayal, absolutely. But to those he considers family? Fiercely protective, generous, even tender in his way." She traced the rim of her coffee cup. "He loved me once. Completely, possessively. He will love his son the same way." "And Elena?" I couldn't help asking. "Where does she fit in this new arrangement?" Something hardened in Vittoria's expression. "That depends entirely on her. If she accepts Marco, treats him with kindness, Alessandro can be surprisingly forgiving in time. If not..." She left the consequence unspoken but clear. "She'll try," I said, though I wasn't certain this was true. Elena's plan to win Marco's trust seemed more tactical than genuine. "She's always wanted a family." Vittoria's eyes met mine, knowing and tired. "There's a difference between wanting a family and wanting to be Mrs. Romano. I hope, for everyone's sake, your sister understands that distinction." She set down her cup with a finality that suggested our conversation was ending. "I should check on Marco. The doctors want me to rest before my afternoon treatment." "Of course." I stood, suddenly aware I'd been prying more than was polite. "Thank you for the coffee." As I turned to leave, Vittoria called after me. "Sophia." I looked back to find her watching me with an unreadable expression. "Be careful how deeply you involve yourself in Romano family matters. The price of admission can be higher than you expect." The warning lingered with me as I left the guest house, making my way back toward the main estate. The morning sun had climbed higher, burning away the dew on manicured lawns. From the outside, everything looked perfect. A palatial home, beautiful grounds, wealth beyond measure. But I couldn't shake the sense that I was walking into an elegant trap, one that had already ensnared my sister and now threatened to capture me as well. I found Elena in her suite, changed from her breakfast attire into a swimming costume and cover-up. Her expression was tightly controlled, revealing nothing of how the family breakfast had gone. "Well?" I prompted. "How was it?" "Enlightening," she replied, gathering her hair into a ponytail. "Marco is a sweet child, smart, observant. Alessandro dotes on him already." Her voice was impressively neutral. "I've invited them to join me by the pool, bonding time with my new stepson. I studied my sister, trying to reconcile this composed woman with the broken bride of the previous night. "And you're okay with all this?" Elena's smile was cold and determined. "I'm adapting, Sophia, as must we all." She turned to me, eyes sharp with purpose. "Did you see her? Vittoria?" "Yes," I admitted, settling onto the edge of Elena's bed. "We had coffee. She seems resigned to all this, focused entirely on Marco's future." Elena nodded, absorbing this information with calculated interest. "And the cancer? Did she mention her treatments?" I felt a twinge of discomfort at my sister's clinical detachment. "She has an appointment this afternoon. She looks tired, Elena. Ill." 6 months, Elena murmured almost to herself. That's what she told Alessandro, 6 months at most. She caught my expression and shrugged defensively. "I'm not wishing death on her, Sophia. I'm simply acknowledging reality. Soon Marco will need a mother figure, and I intend to be there for him." The cold pragmatism in her voice chilled me. "Is that really what you want, to raise Alessandro's child with another woman?" "What I want," Elena replied sharply, "is to secure my position in this family. Marco is the key to that." She softened slightly at my concerned expression. "He's a sweet boy, actually, clever. Reminds me a bit of you at that age, thoughtful, observant." I wondered if my sister was already forming a genuine attachment or simply recognizing useful traits to exploit. With Elena, the line between calculation and genuine feeling had always been blurry. "Come to the pool with me," she urged suddenly. "Alessandro's bringing Marco to swim. It would be good for you to be there too. Make it seem more like a normal family outing." Normal. The word seemed absurdly inadequate for the situation we found ourselves in. Nevertheless, I agreed, changing quickly into a borrowed swimsuit while Elena called for a staff member to bring towels and refreshments to the Olympic-sized pool behind the main house. The pool area was like something from a luxury resort, azure water gleaming in the midday sun, elegant lounge chairs arranged in perfect symmetry, a pool house that could have comfortably housed a family of 4. Elena arranged herself on a chaise lounge with the precision of an actress taking her mark, angling her body to display her figure to best advantage while appearing casually relaxed. I chose a chair slightly apart, watching my sister's performance with a mixture of admiration and concern. Elena had always been adaptable, ambitious, resilient, but this level of calculation in the face of such emotional upheaval was something new. Alessandro and Marco arrived 15 minutes later, the contrast between them striking. The man in expensive swim shorts, powerful and imposing even in casual attire, and the boy in bright blue trunks decorated with cartoon sea creatures, clutching a pool toy. Marco spotted us and waved enthusiastically, while Alessandro's gaze swept over the scene with that assessing quality I'd noticed at the wedding. "Elena?" He greeted his bride with formal correctness, bending to brush his lips against her cheek. "You look beautiful today." "Thank you, husband," she replied, her smile perfect and unreadable. "I thought a swim would be nice for Marco. Children need physical activity." Alessandro's expression softened slightly at her mention of his son. "Indeed, Marco has been looking forward to trying the pool." He turned to me with a courteous nod. "Sophia, I'm glad you've decided to stay with us for a while. Your sister needs family around her during this adjustment period." The polite fiction that this was all normal, all acceptable, made my skin crawl. But I smiled and nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. "Can I jump in now, Dad?" Marco asked, bouncing slightly with the barely contained energy of childhood. "Let me check the water first," Alessandro replied, his protective instinct immediate and natural. He tested the temperature with one hand before nodding. "Stay in the shallow end until I join you." We watched as Marco cannonballed into the pool with a delighted shriek, splashing water in a wide arc. Alessandro winced slightly as droplets spattered his expensive watch, then carefully removed it, placing it on a side table. "He's a natural swimmer," Elena observed, her voice warm with an appreciation that seemed almost genuine. "Has he had lessons?" "Vittoria enrolled him in a program in Boston," Alessandro replied. His casual mention of his ex-wife's name in front of his new bride was pointed, a reminder of the reality Elena had agreed to accept. He's quite fearless in the water. Elena maintained her composed smile. Perhaps we could continue those lessons here. I know an excellent instructor who works with the children of several family friends. Alessandro studied her for a moment, as if assessing her sincerity. That would be thoughtful. Thank you. The dynamic between them fascinated me. The careful dance of power and accommodation, the testing of boundaries in the new arrangement they'd established. Despite everything, they seemed to be finding a tentative equilibrium. "Dad, watch this," Marco called, executing a somewhat uncoordinated somersault under the water. Alessandro's face transformed, pride and affection replacing his usual guarded expression. "Well done," he called back, then turned to us. "Excuse me, ladies. Fatherly duties call." He dove into the pool with unexpected grace for a man of his size and stature, surfacing near his son, who squealed with delight at the attention. "You see?" Elena murmured, watching them. Already wrapped around the boy's little finger. "Marco is the center of Alessandro's world now, and that doesn't bother you?" I asked quietly. She shrugged one elegant shoulder. "It simplifies things, actually. My path forward is clear. Win Marco's affection. Make myself essential to his happiness, and Alessandro will value me accordingly." That sounds calculating. "It's practical," she countered. "We all have our roles to play in this family. I'm adapting to mine." Before I could respond, movement at the edge of the pool area caught my attention. Vittoria approached slowly, dressed simply in linen pants and a loose blouse, her dark hair pulled back from her face. She looked even more tired than she had earlier, but carried herself with quiet dignity. Alessandro noticed her immediately, his body language shifting subtly, a tensing of shoulders, an alertness that hadn't been there before. Beside me, Elena straightened almost imperceptibly, her casual pose becoming more deliberate. "I didn't mean to interrupt," Vittoria said, her voice carrying softly across the water. "Marco has an appointment with the tutor in 20 minutes. I thought you might want to know." Alessandro nodded. "We'll be finished shortly." To Marco, he added, 5 more minutes, then we need to get you ready for your lessons." The boy pouted but didn't argue. His easy acceptance of authority spoke volumes about his upbringing. Vittoria had clearly instilled respect and discipline despite raising him alone. "I can help him get ready," Elena offered, her voice pitched to carry to both Alessandro and Vittoria, "if you'd like." The surprise on both their faces was evident, though differently expressed. Alessandro's eyebrows rose slightly, while Vittoria's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered. "That's kind of you," Vittoria finally said, "but I can manage." Elena's smile remained fixed. "It's no trouble. We had such a nice conversation at breakfast. I'd like to get to know Marco better." The underlying current of this exchange, territory being marked, boundaries tested, was almost palpable. Alessandro looked between the two women, his expression unreadable, before turning to his son. "What do you think, Marco?" he asked. "Would you like Elena to help you prepare for your tutor?" The boy considered this seriously, his dark eyes, so like his father's, moving from Vittoria to Elena and back again. "Can both help?" he suggested with childlike diplomacy. "Mom can pick my books and Elena can help with clothes?" The innocence of this solution, dividing the maternal duties without excluding either woman, created a moment of unexpected warmth. Vittoria's lips curved in a small, sad smile, while Elena nodded with gracious acceptance. "A wise compromise," Alessandro approved, helping Marco out of the pool and wrapping him in a towel. "We'll make a negotiator of you yet." As they walked toward the house together, father, son, current wife, and former wife, I was struck by the strange tableau they created. From a distance, they might almost have appeared to be a normal, if unconventional, family unit. Up close, the undercurrents of tension, calculation, and unresolved emotion were impossible to miss. Left alone by the pool, I found myself questioning everything. My sister's determination to carve out a place in this dangerous family. Vittoria's acceptance of Alessandro as Marco's guardian, despite their clearly complicated past. Alessandro himself, the man at the center of this strange constellation, whose power pulled everyone into his orbit. I was still lost in thought when a shadow fell across me. I looked up to find Alessandro standing there, water still dripping from his shoulders, his expression thoughtful. "You disapprove," he stated rather than asked. "I see it in your eyes when you watch us." I tensed, suddenly aware of being alone with him. It's not my place to approve or disapprove. His laugh was unexpected, a genuine sound of amusement, diplomacy, a useful skill in this household. He settled into the chair Elena had vacated. "Your sister is adapting well, better than I anticipated. Elena has always been resilient," I replied carefully. Alessandro nodded. "It's one of the qualities that attracted me to her. That, and her ambition." His perceptiveness was unsettling. "But you worry about her." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Of course. This situation is unusual. Life rarely follows the paths we expect," he said with philosophical detachment. 24 hours ago, I was toasting my bride at our wedding. Now I'm balancing 2 households and meeting the son I never knew existed." He studied me with those penetrating dark eyes. "But family adapts, survives. Is that what we are now?" I couldn't help asking. "Family?" His smile was both charming and predatory. "You're Elena's sister. She's my wife. Marco is my son. Vittoria is his mother. The connections are clear if complicated." He leaned forward slightly. "I protect what's mine, Sophia. That now includes all of you." The statement should have been reassuring. Instead, it sent a chill down my spine, the promise of protection carrying an implicit threat. Being his meant being subject to his rules, his expectations, his control. "I should go check on Elena," I said, rising from my chair. Alessandro nodded, accepting my retreat. "Of course. Family supports each other through transitions." His use of the word family seemed deliberate, a reminder of how he now categorized me. "We'll speak again soon." As I walked away, I felt his eyes following me, that assessing gaze cataloging reactions, measuring loyalty. I understood better now why Vittoria had fled years ago and why she had ultimately returned. The gravitational pull of Alessandro Romano's world was both powerful and dangerous. Once in his orbit, escape came at tremendous cost. I found Elena in Marco's newly designated bedroom, helping the boy organize his school books, while Vittoria selected appropriate clothing. The domestic scene was surreal in its forced normalcy. 3 people navigating roles that had been thrust upon them less than a day before. "Ah, Sophia," Elena greeted me with a brightness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Marco was just telling me about his favorite subjects. He's quite advanced for his age." Vittoria smiled faintly. "He's always loved learning." The pride in her voice was evident, though her hands trembled slightly as she folded a small sweater. The physical toll of her illness was increasingly apparent in these small signs of weakness she couldn't hide. Marco looked between the 3 women with thoughtful eyes. "Will you all be here when I finish my lessons?" he asked. "Of course," Elena answered quickly. "We're family now." The word echoed Alessandro's earlier statement, but with a different undertone, determination rather than possession. Vittoria and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the strange reality we now occupied. As I watched my sister seamlessly integrate herself into this new role, I realized that for better or worse, our lives had irrevocably changed. The Romano family had absorbed us, transformed us, marked us as their own. What had begun as my sister's wedding day had evolved into something far more complex, a merging of lives and histories that would shape all our futures in ways we couldn't yet imagine. Family adapts, survives. Alessandro's words repeated in my mind as I observed this newly formed unit. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps we would all find our places in this strange new constellation, orbiting around each other in a delicate balance of power, necessity, and perhaps, eventually, something like love. For now, all I knew with certainty was that the fairy tale my sister had imagined had been replaced by a far more complicated story, one where happy endings weren't guaranteed, but survival, at least, remained possible. And in the Romano family, perhaps that was the best one could hope for.